Service Committee to order. If I could get a motion for approval of our previous meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. You have that going on yours. It seems like it's reverb. You see that? May I get a motion to suspend rules relating to meeting in person and voting in person?
I'll make a motion to suspend all council rules that require in-person meeting and voting.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have 5 pieces before us this afternoon. The first one is ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract or contracts for construction of the sanitary sewer reconstruction 2019 small diameter lining project and declaring an emergency. Mr. Leto?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of committee. We brought a similar piece of legislation to you a few months back on the large diameter. So this is our small diameter lining project for our sanitary and combination sewers. There's about 45 assets that we are looking to do in this project. This is a little bit under $3 million project. With the interest rates and the current levels, we are bringing this to you now, and then at 3 o'clock in budget, there'll be the bond for this legislation that either Shelley or Steve will present. I will be on there too also, but we did receive a $500,000 OPWC grant to help fund this project that will come off of the total amount of the project. These are assets that are identified from our CMOM program, from our TV and cleaning, whether they were TV last year or the previous year. We have to, according to the acute defect, we have either 1 year or up to 5 years to either replace these lines or to rehabilitate them. And lining is the less invasive. It doesn't require digging typically, maybe sometimes around a manhole, but they get in and they get out, and there's usually no disruption to the traveling public.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Any questions from council? Okay, can I get a motion for suspension of the rules?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Our next piece, ordinance proceed with and levying special assessments for the improvement and maintenance of the off-street parking facilities in the Kenmore Business District and the Canton Road Business District and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of committee. This is our annual assessments to the property owners that benefit from this off-street parking. There's no increase to the assessment rate. This is for true cost of the improvements that were done last year, whether it's snow plowing or if it was any type of minor repairs we did to these parking lots. So these, like I said, these rates have not changed in a few years, and it is the true cost of the improvements that were done last year to the property owners.
Okay, any questions from committee members? Any questions from council? Okay, can I get a motion for suspension of the rules?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
Okay, I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. Our next piece, ordinance determining to proceed with the levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets in the city between certain termini by providing street cleaning services, street lighting, approving the report of the Assessment Equalization Board, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Leto?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of committee. Yeah, we had our hearing on Friday. The there was a few objections which we heard. And this is just the assessments for the street cleaning and street lighting to whether it's residential or commercial. Again, there's no increase to the cost of the assessment rate. The rates vary residential to commercial. Some residential are a little bit less expensive than others, but I mean, I've seen assessments for a residential user, a little bit under $70 a month. But typically they're a little bit under 100, not a month, a year. So it's like 36 a half or something like that. So it's under $100 for a residential unit per year. And they're paid to Summit County each half of their property tax.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Any questions from council? Okay, can I get a motion for suspension of the rules?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, ayes have it. Our next piece is resolution declaring it necessary to improve Waterloo Road between the termini of Interstate 77 and 100 feet east of Brewster Creek by constructing and reconstructing curbs, concrete sidewalks, and driveway approaches and declaring an emergency. Mr. Lettle?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of committee. This project is probably long overdue, and some of you have been on council for a while, and I think probably Councilman Kamer's got plenty of complaints about Gower Ditch and the debris. So we are not only replacing the street surface and the driveway, we are replacing the 2 culvert pipes underneath the road, because that ditch, it's notorious for debris getting caught on there and these big storms, and then the water will overtop the road. So this has probably been long overdue, and we're looking forward to this project.
This project, it says that it's supposed to be designed and finished by August, but they don't start on it till November.
We haven't even started on it yet, so I don't know where it says.
If you go down to estimated schedule at the very bottom.
Oh, that's incorrect, because we haven't even started it yet.
Okay. If you could get that correct.
Yeah, I'll get that back to you.
Okay.
But I'm thinking it'll be done next year at this time.
Oh, really? Do you have any questions about this, Councilman Kamer, before we move forward?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Chairwoman. No, I'm in favor of this project. Obviously, let the council members know, and Chris Lettle, he is correct. This is long overdue. This is a popular area where when it floods, it floods. And obviously, traffic has to be rerouted. There is a lot of flooding that actually damages the street, et cetera. So yeah, I'm in support of this. I would like my name added, please, to this piece of legislation. But then also, Councilwoman, thanks for asking that question. I would like to know the time frame and any other additional details according to the legislation, please. Thank you.
I'll have that for tonight, Councilman.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Chris, one other question. If you're not starting this project until next year, what do you guys, what's the plan to help offset some of the flooding that they're experiencing now before they start the project?
No, I said it wouldn't be done till next year.
I know, I heard that part, but Councilman Kamer talked about the flooding that they currently are experiencing. Is there a plan to help offset them with the flooding until you guys start the project?
Well, what sewer does proactively, they monitor that ditch, okay? So they know a big storm's coming, they will check it and they will get it cleaned right away. So they've been monitored for a couple of years, because going back probably 10 years ago, we had to take great alls out there. I mean, it was a real mess. So they have really been proactive on maintaining those culvert pipes to make sure they're clear.
Okay, okay. Are there any other questions from committee members? Any question from council members? Okay, can we get a motion for suspension of the rules?
I make a motion.
We have a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. Our last piece is resolution declaring it necessary to improve West Market Street between the Termini Revere Road and Hawkins Avenue and Portage Path to State Route 59 by resurfacing and declaring an emergency. Mr. Leto?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of committee. This is our last piece of the legislation, the resolution of necessity for the assessment portion of it. This is about 4 miles of resurfacing. We brought this to you before. It's West Market Street from downtown here by the Federal Building out to Portage Path. And then it's where we left off last year, just west of Hawkins. I think it was Manor or something like that, out to the Corp Line Revere Road. So that's what this piece of legislation. ODOT is going to be doing some work later this year, but this resurfacing, since their fiscal year is June to June, they will not be resurfacing this till the asphalt plants open early in the spring of next year.
Okay. All right. Any questions from committee members? I have a question from Councilman Malik.
Sure.
Sorry, I realize I'm not on the committee. I want to defer in case anyone
That's
else
okay.
has questions first.
No, go for it.
Okay. So, anyway, sorry.
I'm on the committee.
Oh,
Okay.
did you have a question, Rich? I didn't see your hand.
Yeah, it's okay. I know it's hard. It's hard with Zoom, and I'm sure Shamus was going to ask a good question. But so the timeline then is that people who drive on West Market, one of our largest traveled streets, the timeline for some disruption construction is, Mr. Leto?
Well, I mean, what they'll be doing this year, they'll be doing some curb work, rehabilitating some curb, and
Okay.
doing that process of what they call Mr. Manhole. As you know, we
Okay.
get a lot of complaints from uneven manholes. So the new process is what the contractor will be using is a machine that goes, core drills completely around the manhole cover and then brings it up to grade. So they'll be doing that type of work, but they don't feel like they could do all that work before the asphalt plants close this year. So during the construction, even when they're repaving the road, they will always maintain traffic throughout the project. Okay. So if they have to shift people over and only one lane in each direction of Market, they will maintain traffic. They will not detour around Market Street.
Okay. One quick follow-up question to that is just hopefully there'll be some notification strategy for these drivers that these improvements are coming. Expect a little less than ideal conditions, however you want to word it. I think that does a lot for getting acceptance from the citizens when they know ahead of time what's going to be happening.
Absolutely.
Okay, Councilman Malik.
Yeah, my apologies, Councilman Swirsky.
No, it's
Over eager there. But my question was along the same lines, and I think it was mostly addressed about the timeline. And I know we've been discussing the timeline, on an ongoing basis over the last few months. But I was particularly wondering, with regard to the Dominion project that's going on Market now, I think in the general same location, I think they're going to need to be doing some repairs to the curbs as well. And has there been any thought to making sure those timelines align so that, they're not doing some repair and then ODOT is coming in and doing the same thing a week later?
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the reasons why we pushed this off because of that Dominion project. So all their work has to be done before this project would even begin. So we would not overlap projects, no.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from committee or council members? Okay, can I get a motion for suspension of the rules?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion.
Second.
From Councilman Swirsky and a second from Councilman McKittrick. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. If we have nothing else coming before.
Excuse me, Chairman Samples, can I say
Yes.
one more thing?
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, I just got a message that the construction for the Brewster Creek will start November of this year and it will finish May of next year. So it's about a 6-month project. So it'll be done by spring or late spring of next year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Okay, so if we have nothing else coming before us, we are adjourned.
I'm ready.
Okay, I was just going to ask you. So the next committee meeting will be Public Safety Committee meeting. Those committee members are Kamer, Samples, Swirsky, Malik, and McKittrick.
All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead and move forward with the public safety meeting and call it to order. But before we do so, can we make a motion and vote to suspend all council rules that require in-person meetings and in-person voting before conducting this meeting, please?
So
So moved. So moved.
All right,
second.
thank you. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thanks. We did have a meeting last week and we do have minutes to approve. So can I get approval of those minutes, please?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, moving forward. We do not have no new legislation, but we do have one old piece. I guess I'll go ahead and read it in. It's a resolution urging the passage of comprehensive legislation around the nation to require unions representing law enforcement officers to bear financial responsibility to local government employers in situations where that union has appealed the termination of an officer for improper use of force. The officer is returned to work through the union's appeal procedure, and the officer again engages in misconduct related to use of force and declare an emergency. Last week, the committee's report was time. Russ Neal was not available, and I think he is on today. Here he is. So I'll turn it over to Russ. But before I do so, I did get an email asking for our police union, Clay Kozart, to speak to, and we will have an opportunity to hear from the union side. But first, we'll hear from the sponsor, and that's Russ Neal. Go ahead, Councilman. And you're on mute.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. This resolution is directly related to the national protests that have been taking place across the country. Here in our city, across the counties, state, across the nation, because of the viewing of the murder of George Floyd, folks came out and demonstrated in protest against the systemic issues that are related to policing in this nation. In our city, we had multiple demonstrations where people came out and protest en masse because of the frustration of the national systemic issues with policing in this nation. Do we have issues in our local community? Yes, we do, like everybody does. But the protests that we experienced were directly connected to the systemic and institutional practices that have taken place throughout the policing in this nation. Most recently, our council passed legislation that was directly related to the protests that took place in our city because of the death of George Floyd. That was the no chokehold, no neck restraint, legislation. If you see something, say something. When we passed that legislation, we didn't ask if we had a problem with our law enforcement officers within the city of Akron using illegal chokeholds. We passed that legislation because we understood the systemic problem that's taking place in this country nationally. Same thing with, if you see something, say something. Those were best practice legislations that were being passed by communities across the country after research of what the problem was within this country. In doing and having discussions with legislators locally, within our region, across the state, and listening to the testimony of the police chief on CBS, where he talked about the challenges of dealing with the unions. Many of the mayors were talking about the challenges of dealing with the unions when it came to these issues. And so what was being found is when they looked at most of the officers that were involved in these lethal use of force cases, is that most of them had multiple infractions. The officer that had his knee on the neck of George Floyd had over 17 different infractions. We know about the case with Tamir Rice up in Cleveland. And this is just a systemic problem that kept popping up. So this resolution speaks directly to this national issue. And what it's asking is that unions that represent law enforcement on the local, state, and national level develop comprehensive legislation that would, using what we, from our experiences here, that led to the drafting of this, create equitable outcomes. And so if an officer is asked to be removed by a municipality, and there's a process that you go through to do that, after a city has invested all this money into an officer, if they found that his conduct is unwarranted being an officer of the city anymore because of an illegal use of force, and they move to have him removed, and the union, doing what it's supposed to do, represents that officer, and through the arbitration process gets that officer his job back, here's the piece that would be different. Then the union and the city would stand behind that officer with co-exposure, so that if that officer is guilty of another offense of illegal use of force, that now the union would have some skin in the game. Because the problem when we look at what's been taking place is that bad officers have been protected by the present structure under the unions. So that's the basic foundation of the request of the resolution that's before us right now. And some people say, well, I see we have Mr. Cozart on with us. The comment was, well, we don't have any problems here in Akron. But what I want us to understand, the reason why this has to be addressed nationally, anywhere in Akron, you could drive 5 to 10 miles in any direction, and you may pass through 1, 2, or possibly even 3 different police districts. If you drive through the state of Ohio, you have the potential of going through any one of 846 different police districts. This is not an Akron problem, just an Akron problem, or a Summit County problem, or a state of, this is a national problem. This is what we saw when many who are on this screen went out with our constituents in mass protests. It was protesting the systemic problems with policing in this country. And this is one way to start to address them.
Is that it, Councilman, for now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. What I'll do is, before I call on Clay, we'll ask committee members if they have any questions or comments in regards to this resolution presented by Councilman Neal. And I do see Shamus, Councilman Malik, his hand is up first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilman Neal. I just wanted to speak, as regards to my perspective on the resolution. As I shared with Councilman Neal, over the phone directly, I think that this resolution is, I appreciate the place from which it's coming, but I think that it's putting the cart before the horse in that we're encouraging folks to do other jurisdictions to do something that we haven't considered here in Akron, and that we haven't asked the questions that would allow for us to implement this, right? I think that, we certainly ought to look at things like what kinds of settlements has the city of Akron engaged in regarding police use of force. We should ask hard questions about our discipline process or about why we, might need a stronger police auditor system or additional forms of oversight and accountability. But I think that's what the process we put into place for reimagining public safety in September is supposed to be about. And I think this puts the cart before the horse in saying, we want this outcome. We're not even implementing this outcome, but we want other people to implement this outcome when we haven't done the work in terms of thinking about what this would look like here or how it would impact our current system, right? This would need to be negotiated into the union contract. And I don't think that anyone should say we don't have systemic problems here in Akron. I think there's plenty that we need to improve here in Akron. I think we paid the Police Executive Research Forum in 2011 to tell us that. And I think there are recommendations in there that need to be implemented. I think there's totally room for conversations about how unions might protect bad apples who ought to have more severe discipline as a result. And I know those are conversations that we're all going to be having. But I just worry that this does not have that conversation. This is kind of the end point of that conversation.
May I answer that?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman.
Okay. Well, first, let's understand, per our rules that were changed at the beginning of this year, council cannot even have a conversation unless there is legislation before us. And if you understand the legislative process, that's when the discussion starts. It's not just it comes in, we vote it up or down. We discuss it, we debate it, it goes back, maybe be amended, come back before us. There is a process, the legislative process. So this is where it starts. Our law department, the City of Akron Law Department, drafted the resolution after we had much discussion that started back around the beginning of June, if not the end of May. So much thought went into this. But my colleagues, per our rules, we cannot discuss anything on council floor unless there is legislation. This resolution creates the opportunity for us to have this discussion.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm going to go ahead and say something real quick. I kind of disagree with that in regards to having a resolution or legislation to start that conversation, unless I'm missing something. But I believe us council members, we can, like Shamus asked or mentioned, we can have that conversation. We reach out to whatever department, even the law department, and we can get that information. Like he mentioned, finding out or having that conversation about bad apples. I mean, do we have several police officers that are being hired or being disciplined? And I believe we can find that out. If I'm mistaken, I would like to know that answer, but I don't think it starts with bringing a resolution or legislation to council in regards to any topic for the city. So with that, Councilman Swirsky, I see your hand up.
I kind of agree with Councilman Malik that before we call on other cities or other states or the federal government to take a look at this issue. I mean, I really do want to make sure our police are operating professionally and effectively in our community, and there is no room for excessive force that we've seen in some of these other cities. But I also haven't heard of that happening here. So if it is, I would like to know about it. I want to go over a few of the questions I have about the resolution, because I did take time to read it kind of carefully. You talk about communities ravaged by lawsuits. That's the words you used. Has this been happening in Akron? If it has, I would like to know about that. How many? Let me finish before you answer. Okay, it's not the total picture, but I do start from the premise that we ought to take a look at our own situation before we call on other government bodies to enact legislation. And has that been happening in Akron? I would like to know about it. How many? What's the cost? You talk. Okay, so I don't know. Should we go one question at a time? Let me ask all my questions. You try, and how should we do this, Chair? I got about 3 or 4 questions.
How many questions you got, Councilman?
I got about 3.
All right.
I'll limit it to 3.
All right, shoot them out. Go ahead.
Okay, so the second one is, in the legislation, they refer to the unions sharing in the costs of a lawsuit to place the financial responsibility upon the union. So what does this mean? I mean, there's no numbers. What percentage? Is there a percentage we're looking for? Is there a certain amount of costs that would be absorbed by the union? Would there be a formula for doing it? These are complicated. Those are kind of complicated questions. So I would like to see some more. A lot of this resolution may seem kind of vague, with a noble intention. I know we want to make sure the police are doing everything they can to avoid the bad cop type activities. I know we want to, as a city government, work towards that, but how would this be administered? How would this happen? I mean, to me it's kind of vague. We're asked to support other legislation. Is there other legislation now pending in state or federal sort of legislation that exists? Usually we've done some resolutions in support of other legislation at the State House, especially, and some nationally. But usually there's already some legislation to support. So at this point, it seems, I hope you could answer some of these questions for me.
I'd be happy.
Thank you for your patience.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first to your first question. Nationally, last year, over $250 million was spent just on police misconduct. Those were the fees just on police misconduct. Now you ask about Akron specifically, but I want to share with you all. I think Akron, because the reporter David Livingston was doing some research, and I believe the administration got him some information over, I don't know what the time period is. I think it's somewhere around 900,000, just under $1 million, with the largest settlement being somewhere around 400-something thousand dollars not too long ago. That information will come out from them. But I want you to understand this. Many of you have constituents who will be sending children off to college. Not everybody's going to the University of Akron. Oh, some will be going close, like to Kent State. You'll say, oh, some will be going close up to Cleveland, where Tamir Rice was murdered. Some might be going down to Cincinnati or to Louisville, Kentucky. Some might be going to Minnesota University. Our children will be going all over the nation to go to school. This is why the no chokehold that was used. Did we ask when we passed that, what was the number of officers in the city of Akron choking people out? No, we knew that nationally that was it had been identified as a problem, and we wanted to make sure that we passed that legislation. Did we ask if we have a problem with the officers within this Akron Police Department kind of like not snitching on one another, not telling if an officer does wrong. No, we didn't ask that. We saw that that good policy had been developed and we passed it. So to your point, in Akron, it's somewhere just under $1 million for the past few years. I'm not sure, but that will be coming out in a report that they're doing. Nationally, last year, just for police misconduct, it was over $250 million. You asked me another question, Mr. Swirsky. I can't remember the last one.
Well, I asked you about when it says place financial responsibility upon the unions. What does that mean? Is there a percentage? How much money is that going to be? How is it going to be collected? Just a minute. How's it going to be collected? How's it going to be administered? How's that going to happen?
Mr. Swirsky, you know, as legislators, we leave that to the administration. That would be something that would be discussed between the administration and the union. In a conversation I had with Councilman Brad McKittrick, he enlightened me to something. He said, you know, the unions don't have responsibility for the training. So I said, you know what? In Akron's case, what would happen if I was a union representative negotiating this? I'd say, hey, if we're going to stand and share in an equitable portion, okay? If we were to adopt this, then you've got to make sure that our officers have the top flight training that's required. That's a part of negotiations. The fine details of this takes place in the discussion. But what we have to understand is that we have a problem. This is an opportunity for unions and the cities in which they serve in to stand side by side and address it in this manner. Now, I appreciate the dialogue that we're having, but please understand, the legislative process is where it takes place.
Okay, is there the final question about, is there existing federal legislation that's pending or state legislation?
No,
you're calling on us to support them, but
I can share this with you, Mr. Swirsky.
Yeah.
Cleveland and Youngstown are looking at this. The Ohio Municipal League, we've been discussing this our past 2 meetings. Sheriffs from townships like Buckeye and others have looked at this and given their opinions. This is new. You know, we don't always have to copy somebody else. We're allowed to create and birth new legislation as well. So what's being done right now is discussion is being had, but everyone sees the merit in the legislation. And so, like I said, I know Youngstown will be looking at this Wednesday. I was just in a meeting with a councilman from Cleveland regarding this legislation today.
You mean those are other resolutions?
No, they are looking at this specific one.
I mean, are they looking at an ordinance to make their city follow these practices, or are they looking at a similar resolution that you provided us?
No, they're looking at the resolution that's here because, again,
Okay.
Mr. Swirsky, the hammering out of the legislation, the fine tuning would take place. Like as council members, we don't get involved in the negotiations between the administration and the union. We're urging, when they have these conversations, that they work to find a way that they can collaborate and work together collectively. And when you really want to show that you are standing side by side, why should all the exposure be on the citizens of Akron? I mean, the challenge is a lot of times we're defending officers who may not even live in this city. So I just want to give you, let you know that others are looking at it. The state municipal league that we are a part of is looking at it. The state NAACP has supported it.
Okay. Thanks, Councilman. I know Councilwoman Samples, she wants to weigh in too. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to just reiterate, this is a resolution, not legislation. We pass resolutions all the time. It's an act. We're not making law here. I support the resolution. I think that there should be some costs that should be bared outside of taxpayers if an officer comes back and does wrong again. I mean, even from a union standpoint, and I can't speak for Mr. Cozart, but if you have a bad actor, why would you want to keep them on the force? That's just my opinion. And why should the taxpayers pay for that? But again, this is a resolution. We've passed several resolutions where there was no law attached here in the city, and we've asked all the way up to the White House for them to enact something or to act on something, or we've sent something in opposition to something that's come out, whether to the Congress, to the State House. So I don't want us to get caught up in what's not here. It's an ask, whether we're asking here locally or nationally. We've done this before with things that don't just affect the city of Akron. I think that if it does get to the point of being legislation, I think there needs to be a meeting of the minds to make sure that it's crafted where everybody can respect it and support it, whether that's us here in the legislative body, the administration, and even the union. And again, we have no say in that. That's up to them. But to me, it seems like we should not want our taxpayers to bear the cost of bad actors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman McKittrick, you got a question or a comment for Russ Neal?
I just want to make a couple statements here. Councilman Malik had a good point when he made mention of a contract by agreement. The city, in good faith, enters into agreements with all of our bargaining units out there. I feel that something like this would have to be revisited in a contractual type of situation. Also, the mention of Tamir Rice, what was the problem with that was a hiring practice. And I feel what we're going to address in the charter here with the change from a rule of threes to a rule of 10 will give assistance in hiring, where we won't have to make a decision out of 3 people. If we have candidates that should not be hired, it gives a wider swath to be able to avoid those types of problems in a hiring practice. So that's just one way that we're going to be able to address this for future problems like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Good statement. Let's see, with that, I don't see nobody else. Let's get the FOP President Clay Cozart to weigh in on this resolution, because he did email me Friday asking to speak during the public safety meeting. Go ahead, Clay. You're on mute too. There you go.
Chairman Kamer, committee members, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all regarding this resolution that is before you. The members of the Fraternal Order of Police, Akron Lodge 7, and its leadership were highly disappointed and deeply disturbed by the resolution. I will not address the legal ramifications of this resolution, and I'll leave that up to the attorneys. But the resolution does seem to paint the Akron Police Department with a very broad national brush. It's unfortunate. Unintended consequences will be to further sow the seeds of mistrust between good, hardworking Akron police officers and the city administration and council. A mistrust that was furthered by recent hurtful and hateful Facebook posts on a city-run Facebook page. The resolution will also further destroy the morale of the police department, which is approaching a new low. Despite this, our officers have remained professional, even while being physically and verbally attacked while performing something as simple as a traffic stop in a speeding a traffic stop for speeding in a neighborhood. This at a time when members of the FOP were encouraged by Council President Margot Somerville's announcement of forming a committee to continue building the trust between the citizens of Akron and the Akron Police Department. Our members were encouraged when Mayor Horgan promised the FOP would be invited to the table when discussing police improvement. FOP FOP will be a valuable resource at that table. When the city of Akron abolished our in-house police academy, the FOP was vehemently opposed for the very same reasons the current city administration cited credit for reinstating the Akron Police Academy. If the FOP had been granted the opportunity to voice our concerns at that time. A recent poll conducted in the state of Ohio concluded that 82% of Ohioans approved of the way police are doing their jobs. Many politicians would revel at such a high rating. However, as police officers, we realize that rating is not high enough. We realize we all have room for improvement in our lives and in our careers. Investigations depend on having the public trust, and the Akron Police Department, the city of Akron, and FOP have worked diligently the last several years to improve that trust. Our homicide investigation solve rate is routinely higher than the national average because of this trust. But again, there's always more improvement. Now, as the crime rate in Akron continues to rise substantially, let's all work together on positive thoughts and ideas to help continue the trust the Akron Police Department has with the citizens of Akron, so that we may solve these crimes and deter crimes from occurring. Let's concentrate on constructive dialogue rather than resort to unfair labor practices. Akron City Council and the FOP Executive Board can pass resolution after resolution toward one another, but will that truly make things better? Let's instead have open lines of communications so that we may better understand one another. I have met with members of this committee and other city council members regarding other issues in the past and will be available in the future. We should all understand we are not always going to agree, but that does not discount the importance of open dialogue based on fact. Let's recognize and promote what the Akron Police Department does well, alongside areas we can improve. The Akron Police Department should not be mere footnotes when passing needless resolutions, but rather should be celebrated as we strive to find to serve the citizens of Akron even better. I thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Clay. I appreciate that. Committee members, do you have any questions or comments for the FOP President Clay? We do have Councilman Malik. His hand is up first. Go ahead, Councilman.
Sorry, not specifically to Mr. Cozart. I'll defer if other folks have questions for Mr. Cozart.
All right, let me see if we have any questions or comments for him directly, then we can move on. All right, we don't have no questions or comments for you, Clay. So with that, we'll just go back to Shamus real quick and see what you have for the record.
Thank you. Yes, I think that I echo many of the comments that were made by folks. And to Councilman Neal's point, the point of this reimagining public safety process that President Somerville put into place is that we can specifically talk about each of these major issues without having specific legislation before us. And I think that, as was referenced, there has been some information put together about the amounts of settlements that have been paid over the last 10 years. I think that's information that we should dig into. I think that there's a lot of questions that we can ask about this, including how this would work, something like this would work or won't work, or what other jurisdictions have implemented something like this or have not. But to recommend something like this as a sort of best practice without seeing how it would work here, or having a consensus that it would work here, which I don't see right now, or without seeing how it's worked in other locations, seems just not the right move at this time. So, my thought would be that we should take time on this and continue digging into these questions through the process that we have set forward. That's my sole perspective.
Thank you, Councilman. I do see Councilwoman and our very own President Margo Somerville. Her hand is up. I'll call on her.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just want to say this has been a lot of great dialogue. And two, I understand Councilman Neal's where he's coming from, the intent of the resolution, but still there's a lot of questions that I still have. Councilor Sworsky had a lot of my same questions. And some of those questions to me still have not been fully answered. Also, and this is probably just a question that's probably best answered by our law department, just legally, is this something that is in city council's jurisdiction to even implement? I don't even know if we have anyone from law on with us who can really kind of just speak to that.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Let me see if anyone's on. They can hopefully show. But in the meantime, before I call on anyone other council members have questions or comments? I don't see none. Do we have anybody from the law department on? I know Ellen sent a message earlier.
Is Yamini on by chance?
Yes, I'm on right now. Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, I hear you.
Okay, good.
But go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, I think that basically this is again in the form of a resolution, and it's not an ordinance in any way. It is something that is being presented as a in a manner where it's a point that's being raised by Councilman Neal. So legally, for it to be presented, I mean, it is something that is a decision point for all the council people to make on that. But there are certainly issues related to it. I'm not going to go into all kinds of details, but at this meeting, but there are certainly issues that need to be considered in terms of something like this, and it would be something that could be useful to Shamus's Councilman Malik's point at already meetings that are being scheduled for discussion on these points. So those kind of legal issues can come up in there. So legally right now it's being presented as a resolution. So I'll leave it at that. But there are things that need to be considered in terms of the ability for something like this to actually be legally implemented in terms of rights of the union.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you weighing in. I mean, I appreciate the dialogue, and I think a lot of my colleagues know that, with the 9 years I've been here, I voted against a lot of resolutions that really come to council that don't really have the merit, and they're needless. I look at it that this is too early, not enough information. Obviously, I know Councilman Malik said it with our leadership, especially Margot Somerville coming out with the new subcommittees that will be meeting starting in September. I think that's a good direction to go. That's how I feel about resolutions. I understand this is a resolution. We're telling another government entity how we feel, but how can we tell them how we feel when we don't have that information right now, locally, right here in Akron? So that's how I feel. Any other comments before I see what the committee wants to do? Councilman Neal, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think when we passed, like I said, we passed the no choke hold. And if you see something, say something. I can't, maybe you went to the chief and asked, maybe you went to Mr. Cozart and asked if we have a problem with our officers using illegal chokeholds. If we have a problem with our officers not speaking up and saying something when they see something wrong. We passed that legislation. That wasn't a resolution. That legislation that was being passed around the country because of what we saw with George Floyd, because we knew that was something that had to be addressed. This resolution is urging the conversation to what we know has been stated by police chiefs across the country, mayors across the country, the problem of unions protecting bad officers. So to Mr. Cozart's point, I don't think any union, I used to be a Teamster. They weren't going to keep me on if I was a threat to my coworkers. All we're saying is stand with the citizens of Akron after going through the process. There's a very long process, we all know this, for the city to move to remove a police officer. They can fire other city workers pretty quickly, but there is a process they have to go through. And the city carefully calculates if they've crossed their T's and dotted their I's when going through that process. So for the city to even get to that point means that we have a problem. Now, as the contractual agreement has been set up between the union and whatnot, which, may I say, is where the details of this type of resolution or request would be done in the contract negotiations when they work things out. If through that process the union brings an officer back, all we're saying is stand beside the city. Where if that officer is a repeat offender, that you're going to share in some type of equitable financial exposure to protect our citizens. What would that be like? That would be negotiated like they negotiate everything else. But to say that we don't have a national problem, because again, this resolution says nothing about Akron, but we being a part of this nation, just like our citizens came out and demonstrated because of the national problem, we as representatives of those citizens can help address a national problem by starting with this resolution, urging the conversation. Yes, in our community, but across the country. Because as I said, when our sons and daughters leave out the door, they don't just stay in Akron. They could drive 5 to 10 miles either way, and they're in 1 or 2 or 3 different police districts. This has to be handled not just by our city, our county, our state, but by our nation, and that is what this resolution is requesting.
All right, thank you, Councilman. What do you want to do with this resolution today?
Well, I heard Councilman Malik and others. I mean, we are usually quick to rush things through, but the legislative process could take multiple readings. I've got a piece that's been sitting before council since the 21st of February.
Okay.
So I'm not trying to rush. I want us to have a solid piece. I want us to understand. I'd like to be able to sit down with Mr. Cozart, because there were some things that he stated in his press release that were untrue. I want him to know my history of working with the police department, of collectively working with the police department, the county, and Kent State University, presenting the proposal that was the Byrne Grant. And out of that coming the legislation that this council passed for the Neighborhood Mobile Resource Center. I want him to know about my conversations of working with Sergeant Dugan, how I worked with Chief Nice, Deputy Director Brown, and how I'm working now with Chief Ball. So this is an opportunity for all of us to grow. I can learn from him, he can learn from me. What we want at the end is a better relationship ultimately between our police departments across the nation and with the community. But as a way of protecting our citizens, because of the historical data that's out there about the problems with unions protecting police officers, bad police officers, this is a way for us to address that. So this is only the second reading. We say 3 readings. I know we're gonna, if we stick to our normal protocol, we'll be going on recess. That'll give folks time to get more information. I sent a lot of information out. And when we get back, hopefully by that time, Mr. Cozart and I get a chance to meet. We come back in September, let the chips fall where they may. And by that time, we'll also have more input from our colleagues from other cities.
Thanks, Councilman. Well, I'll ask the committee what they want to do, but you said it yourself that you currently have something that's been taking time on since January. Since I've been on council, you do that a lot, where we take time on certain pieces of resolutions or legislation. It sits on our agenda for months or years. Then you're talking about meeting with the FOP president. That should have been done before this resolution. Just my opinions.
Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Councilman Mike Freeman has his hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. So With that, before I ask the committee what they want to do, I will call on Councilman Mike Freeman.
Okay, I think taking time on this, my issue with passing this right now is, President Somerville has set something in order, and we pass this right now. It almost seems like, hey, we know the direction we're going to take. And I think, yeah, let's hold off on this. We're going to meet together starting here in September, see if these things make sense then. But I just don't look, be it ordinance or legislation, I think we need to give time to our council to meet together to discuss what we think are problems and then look and see what ordinances and resolutions need to be passed. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate that. I do see Councilman Jeff Fusco, his hands up too.
Thank you. Some of you may or may not be familiar with this, but in the state of Ohio, it's questionable. I mean, where it would have to be a state change, okay? Because currently we have the State Employees Representation Board, SERB. It's known as SERB. And this particular board here are the ones that make determinations whenever something goes to arbitration. And this here proposal before us, it would require a huge change in the state of Ohio. And it's questionable, I mean, how legal this would be. I don't even believe that this could be negotiated in terms of legally. Again, arbitrators, they make the judgment between the parties. And this has been something that's been followed in the state of Ohio for years and years and years. Just to share some of that with everyone, I'm not sure if everyone knows the procedures currently in place, but this is how it's done in the state of Ohio in terms of dealing with officers, with any employees whatsoever. Again, SERB is the organization that addresses these things, and they're the ones who are going to be dealing with this. So that's it. Thank you.
I can also see that Councilwoman Samples' hand is raised.
All right, Councilwoman, go ahead.
I just want to, if I could, with all due respect,
Take a look.
While we take our time with this and everyone can meet and have a conversation, and maybe Clay and Councilman Neal can get together and have a conversation while we're out on break and seeing what laws, if any, are being violated, and if something constructive can be put in place. So I'm making a motion.
All right, so we have a motion for time. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Let me take the vote. Rich, you got a question or comment?
Well, just a quick comment. I mean, it goes along with, I think, the idea of taking time. But I did want to make a comment on the fact that sometimes we have passed resolutions without examining every word. It's not a great practice, but usually those were not dealing with issues where there was a lot of controversy. There was maybe some good viewpoints on either side of it. And it certainly wasn't in the past. We passed a resolution in support of the Firestone marching band, things like that. They were never these kind of things that are so complicated and such a sensitive issue. So I'm relieved that we're going to take some time on this. We're going to look into it more in depth. And occasionally we have acted quickly when there was something that was just so horrible, like the chokeholds, that we realized, and that there was a lot of consensus about getting rid of any possibility that practice could happen within our police department. So this is a little bit of a unique situation because it is a sensitive issue, and because we are about to engage in a process that is a little more collaborative, collective, looking at these issues. And I think that would be a much better process to handle an issue like this. And I know accountability and transparency these are at the forefront of those committees. And I'm confident that, and possibly this resolution ought to be discussed in that committee, in one of those committees. So it's good that we're taking some time on it. And I wish Russ and the FOP to good luck in meeting and talking about this.
Thank you, Councilman. All right, so moving forward, we do have a motion by Councilwoman Samples for time, and we have a second by Councilman Malik. So all in favor of time, saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, well, I guess time is what we're going to do with this resolution. And with that, nothing else come before us. We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Our next committee meeting will be Public Utilities and Green, and those committee members are Swirsky, Freeman, Connor, Samples, and McKittrick.
Okay, well, we're supposed to start at 2:30, right? So we're a little bit behind. Let's take a 1-minute break. Just 1 minute, guys. Are all the committee members here?
Which committee is this, Rich?
This is the Public Utilities and Green Committee. Mrs. Viviana, do we have all the committee members in attendance?
We do.
Okay. Let's all take a deep breath, relax for a second, but then get started, I guess. So the first order of business is, do I have a motion to suspend all council rules that require in-person voting and meeting?
I'll
So
make that
moved.
motion. Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And do we have a motion for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Oh, second.
Yeah. Okay, so that will just carry. And we have with us today, I think he's here, Mr. Ludlow.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because I know that he presented last week. He had a really good PowerPoint presentation that had a lot of significant benefits to the community of this program, as well as some discussion of how it would be funded. And I'm going to ask Mr. Ludlow to sort of without redoing the whole thing, just kind of recap in a summary way what it is you want us to approve. Very, very quickly, quick summary, and then we'll ask if there's any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of committee. Also, Deputy Director of Finance, Shelley Goodrich, is with me here today to answer any questions also. So thank you for this opportunity again, Chairman Swirsky. We received a few questions that I can address, but the highlight from last week, I think you all remember, we are looking to replace the 85,000 water meters in our system. That's commercial and industrial. The system is currently about 15 years plus old. The batteries are failing. Our customer contact information is outdated. Back when we started this program, a lot of landlines, addresses, owners, those things, the owners obviously change. We update the information, but our contact information for our customers is outdated. So with that, our billing system currently is a drive-by system where a vehicle drives by your house once a month. That data is recorded, then your bill is sent, and it's anywhere from 30 some days up to sometimes 40 days before you receive your bill from the time they drove by, or your cycle, I should say. So with the way our current system is set up with our sewer rates, people that have a leak, especially within the few days of their billing cycle, they receive an outrageously high bill. There's no way for them to know it until they receive the bill, unless they obviously see it and this isn't good for our customers. So we not only need to replace our system, because we have about 100 batteries fail a month currently, and we only expect that to go up. And at some point, it's going to be a major failure. So then we have to give an estimated bill, that type of thing. So some of the questions that were received, and Chairman Swirsky, he's called me a couple times over the last week. He wanted to reiterate that, you know, the rates will not go up. In our current proposal of this project, we don't anticipate a rate increase to perform this project. Our interest rate currently is 1.18% over a 15-year loan. And just to talk about interest rates real quick, you passed a piece of legislation a few weeks back for WPCLF SSR 2018 in Little Darby, if you remember that. And at the time, the rate was a little over 1.09%. Well, we just received our rate. It's been reduced to 0.89% over the life of the 45-year loan, which we expect over the life of the loan to save $151,000 off that project. That's why we're bringing this now. Not only the immediate failure of our meters and our batteries, but the interest rate. We really want to take advantage of that. Some of the other questions that I received, obviously Councilwoman Amobian asked last week, is UMS a member of National League of Cities? Currently, they are not a member of National League of Cities. I wanted to address that. For you, a lot of you, or I'm sure all of you, saw the advisory we put out last Thursday. We had a water main break, a 24-inch in Firestone Park, right by the community center in the front yard of the church. So we had to put it on an advisory. Well, that was a 24-inch transmission main. That went all the way into Kenmore. And if you saw the map, it was all the way down at Hancock and Carnegie. Well, how do we notify those residents that there's actually a boil alert? We put out a media advisory. It's on the radio. It's in the local papers. It's on our website. But really, how do we reach these people? With this new system, we not only will be able to identify which people are affected. Right now, we probably go a little bit farther out just by our GIS on depressurization, or we take phone calls that says, I'm out of water. We will know specifically who has been affected in these type of water main breaks. And when you set your system up, it's going to be, do you want a phone call? Do you want email? Do you want a text message? And you'll receive these notifications very promptly that there is an advisory out that affects your residence or your business. And then when it's lifted, the same thing. But not only that, it's going to be the leaks. It's going to be, you have continuous use over 24 hours. So not having to wait for those 35 or 40 days to get that notification, like, why did my bill go up so high? As I mentioned last week, we bill an HCF, which is 748 gallons. So you do not get another charge until we get another 748 gallons. Well, now currently with the new system, it's going to bill in gallons. So if you use 1,000 gallons, you're going to be billed for 1,000 gallons. Currently, the way it works is you'll be billed for 1 HCF, but then you've already used almost 300 gallons into the next month's bill. And then that's why your bill may fluctuate. So some of those are the high points. I will answer any questions that you have, Councilman Swirsky, or members of committee or members of council. And Shelley will be here. She not only can answer the financial part of it, she's been very involved in the whole projects on the implementation, the picking of the contractor that's going to do the work. So with that, we will take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from other committee members? Are there any questions from other council members? Councilman Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Luddle. I know that when I first looked at this, I had a little bit of sticker shock, but you know, I had a chance to talk about it with Ms. Goodrich and look at, you know, they've been very conscientious and thoughtful in looking at how this would work with regard to debt and the interest rate, to the point that Mr. Ludlow made. And I think as I looked at the project, I think I might have mentioned this before, but you know, the mayor talks about how local government is customer service, right? Whether we're talking about public safety or utilities or whatever, it's customer service. And the quantum leap that this program would allow us to have in terms of providing our water utility service to people is really just incredible, and I think desperately needed. So I think that they've done a really great job on this.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Any other council members, committee members, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Mr.
Who?
Linda
Ms.
Movia.
Samples?
Oh,
Oh, Movia.
Movia.
Okay, sorry, I can't see it on your screen. Go ahead, Councilwoman Movia.
No, Mr. Little, just curious, how many, was this a single source or did we have a number of companies to bid on this?
Well, we put out an RFQ and we had 4 companies that responded. So we went through all their proposals. It was, we gave them each 2 days. We spent almost, I would say, better part of 1 day per proposal. And then we brought them back, and then we narrowed it down to 2, and then we vetted them even more. So it was quite a long process.
So do we pay them the 39 million over a period of time, or this is?
Yes, we actually won't be paying this. In fact, I'll let Shelley answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, so the $39 million is the implementation, which is going to take approximately 3 years. That is what we are financing with WRSLA loans. So we will be paying that back over 15 years. The vendor will receive that amount from OWDA, as they're going through the project and filing and, reporting on what they have completed. They'll be able to request payment for work completed.
I see. So it appears that this impacts a number of different areas and departments based on what I could see in terms of communication and everything, because it has an IT component too, doesn't it? Did you hear that, Ms. Goodrich?
Yes, sorry. Yes, it does have an IT component. Darren Rosnack from our IT department has been very involved because there is the MDM, which is going to be storing the hourly reads that will be eventually reported to our customers through the portal. There is, an IT component of this, that there is a network that we will be launching throughout our city to be able to upload these reads almost continuously, so that we will be able to then alert our customers if there were to be extremely high usage or there appears to be a leak. They will have automatic access to their information.
On the other end, Mr. Luttle, does this do anything to help us identify areas where we may have a water main break? Does it help us identify sooner?
Well, yes, because we'll have alerts out in the system or meters out in the system. So as soon as we get a depressurization, we'll start to get alarms. Okay. Typically, though, water main breaks, they show their ugly head, not like sewer breaks where they're underground. So it usually doesn't take too long to find a water main break. Now, if they do break underground and they're going directly to the storm sewer, let's say, yes, we will find those. We will find those a lot quicker and be alerted to those in a more timely manner. One other thing on the financing is we will not start paying this back for 3 years. So there will be no payments for the first 3 years of this implementation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anybody else want to ask a question? I'm wondering if this, these kind of meters, this kind of smart technology is being used by other cities. So there's some examples, Mr. Little, that you could point to, or?
Yes, they're working currently with with Columbus to do the same thing. UMS is. And there's a lot of smaller cities that are doing this, but Columbus is probably, it's a lot larger utility than ours, but comparable to us. Actually, Pittsburgh is looking for the same type of a program. They haven't implemented anything yet, but this is the Smart Cities initiative.
Yes, it sounds really great. The connecting the citizens and helping them to understand and have control over the information that they get about their bill is just really outstanding, and it's a huge difference that this whole program is going to make. Not to say the benefits in terms of efficiency of our staff and our service department. So is there anybody here who would like to make a motion for, as I understand it, Mr. Little, you would really prefer that we pass this evening?
Yes, sir. I mean, with the current interest rate and, you know, with the timing of council, it would be much appreciated.
Chairman, I
Okay.
can see that Councilman Freeman's hand is up.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Freeman.
Okay. Hey, Chris, I was just wondering, because I know we have a certain percentage of water that we just lose throughout the course of a year. Will this system help us kind of get ahead of the game as identifying where we're losing water that never makes it to the customer, just goes somewhere else?
Absolutely. One thing that we're going to be able to do, and not only customers, but, you know, every place, you know, even though the meter's there, a lot of times we don't know if anything, if the battery fails and we're not getting a read, we're not, sometimes we're losing water people are using, or maybe they're not using, maybe it's a vacant house and it's been cut, and we just say it's in a vacant status, and all of a sudden water could be pouring down the drain, especially in the wintertime when there's a break. But we also have underground leaks that this will help identify, because we're going to put sensors out in the system that we can see the difference. So we know what our pumpage is, and our pumpage a couple months ago was like an all-time low. It was very low, okay? Which we had a very mild winter and the water main breaks were low, so our pumpage was down. But since this summer, we have talked to other utilities. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's the hot, dry weather and the hard ground. We've had a lot of water main breaks in the last 3 weeks. And sometimes those breaks are hard to identify till they come up through the pavement. So this definitely will help.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else have another question or comment? Other council members? Would someone like to make a motion for approval and suspension of the rules?
I'll make that motion for approval.
Second.
Okay, so it's been a motion and a second. In the vote?
Aye.
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 So it's all yes, it's all ayes, and any noes? Okay, so the motion carries and we'll bring it to the floor tonight. With that, I'm gonna close the meeting of the Public Utilities Green Committee. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you
and
for your
some
time.
good participation.
Up next, we'll have the Rules Committee meeting. Those committee members are Freeman, Fusco, Amobian, Connor, and Malik. And you can get started whenever you're ready, Chairman.
Okay, we're live now. We can go ahead.
Yes.
Very good. All right, I'd like to call the rules meeting to order, and I need a motion that we forego any rules as pertains to live or in-person meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. So on our old agenda, we have item number 1. Hopefully each and every one of you have been able to talk with individuals. Any questions we have on item number 1? Okay. Any questions at all? Do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Move.
A
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Sarah, let's go ahead and do roll call on the votes.
Sure. Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0.
Okay. And item number 2. Any questions or additional comments?
Just a comment that item number 2 did have a substitute offered as an amendment, and that was emailed to everyone this morning.
And that is the one that is in our, okay, you want me to go ahead and read it in then? Okay, then item number 2, an ordinance authorizing and directing the submission to the electors of the city of Akron of a proposal to amend and supplement sections 7.1, 7.2, 103, 106, 108, 110, 111, 114, and 116 of the charter of the city of Akron, and to adopt a new section 103A to be voted upon at the next general citywide election on November 3rd, 2020, and declaring an emergency. And do we have anybody that would like to speak to us about the amendment? No? Okay.
So want to read the amendment in?
That was the amendment.
That was the amendment, yes.
Yeah, and I see that President Somerville's hand is raised.
Okay, thank you, President Somerville.
Thank you so much. And I just want to be clear, this is the amendment regarding special meetings, correct?
No, this is Ellen. This is the amendment regarding the HR sections. And I think I also saw Councilman Malik's hand was raised, and he was one of the sponsors of the substitute.
Yeah. So I think, yeah,
That's
Councilman
item-
Malik or Councilman Amobian.
Yes, right.
I think, are we, item 6 is where the other change is at, correct?
The special meeting is in.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Malik?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the portion of the proposed charter review changes that relates to HR. And I know we had a significant discussion last week, and I know that that continued with a number of folks asking questions throughout the week. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about last week was preference points and creating more discretion in how that is implemented, in terms of not necessarily having a 40% bump if someone is a city resident or a military veteran, but having some bump for people applying for entry level. But in the ordinance, there was no authority. It was taking away the authority with regard to promotional preference points. And so this change that the city law department worked on would at least have that as something that could happen. I think the administration and the members of the Charter Review Commission have made good points about why preference points are not necessarily needed for promotions, because once someone's in the door, decisions should certainly largely be made on merit, although we do want to make sure that we have city residents who are not only in our entry-level positions, but also advancing throughout the profession. But anyway, so the city law department worked on this, and there were comments made by me and made by Councilwoman Amobian and others. So I certainly appreciate the administration taking a really thoughtful view of this and working on this. And I think I've now spoken far longer than anyone wants to hear from me.
Thanks for your comments. Ms. Amobian,
Yeah, I just want to certainly thank Mr. Malik for the comments. I did have an opportunity to meet with Mrs. Doty, and I really thank her for the explanation and trying to get me to see what they're trying to do. One of the things I think hopefully would be helpful, instead of limiting the candidates to 3, they are going to expand to 10, which certainly gives us the opportunity to have a wider net, hopefully more diverse personnel, individuals to consider. So I think with what's being attempted, what certainly could be a possible help to HR in trying to accomplish some of the goals they have.
thank you. Looking to see, are there any hands up that I'm missing?
I don't see anyone.
Okay, very good. Okay, if we have no other discussion, do I have a motion to suspend the rules on item number 2?
So moved.
Motion, Ben.
Okay, we have a motion, a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Very good. All right, item number 3. Comments or any discussion that you'd like to have before we entertain this? Okay, looking for a motion to suspend the rules.
Suspend the rules.
Okay, a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Roll call.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
And moving on, item number 4, questions, comments?
This one pertains to, who's there to tell me, because I don't have information in front of me. This is section 106A.
Yes, it's 106A.
And it pertains to, you have the, I think the next one has to do with special meeting.
This one
This
refers to the veterans and residency preference points. This is the one section that specifically deals with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, looking around for any other comments or questions? All right. Okay, I would ask that someone please offer a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
This motion passes 5-0.
All right, moving on. Number 5, questions, comments.
Item number 5 is the other item that had a substitute
one that
offered
had-
as an amendment.
All right, this is an ordinance authorizing and directing the submission to the electors of the city of Akron of a proposal to amend and supplement sections 33, 38, and 141 of the charter of the city of Akron to be voted upon at the next general citywide election on November 3rd, 2020, and declaring an emergency.
Now, this is the one that has with special meetings. Who can call a special meeting?
Yes.
And the concern was last week when we spoke, it asked for a majority of council, and I think the amendment has reduced it to 4 members instead of 2. While I agree with the 2 members, I will support 4 members calling for a special meeting. So,
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, do I have a motion?
President
Margot.
Whoop. Yeah, am I missing
Thank you.
somebody here? Oh, I'm sorry, Margot, go ahead.
It's okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that, wanted to let council members know we had great discussion last week and definitely heard some of the concerns from council members, Councilman Malik, Councilwoman Linda, Amobian. And so ask Sarah from council, I want to thank her to really just to do some research to look at what other cities are doing. And so really found out numbers were really pretty low everywhere around us. And so brought an amendment trying to kind of meet in the middle. And so we thought that 4 council members to call a special meeting was a good compromise. So just hoping that council members will support this issue moving forward.
Very good. Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just was, I heard our council president talk about what other cities are doing, but I'm wondering if we looked at the special meetings that were called by just 2 members and the merit of those meetings. Did anyone look to see, the special meetings that we had and the merit of those meetings? Because when I look at, I know the one that was if you want to say contentious on council, was the one dealing with the primary. But when we look at that special meeting that was called by just two people, the discussion and the debate that took place showed that if we had not had that special meeting, those issues would not have come out, and all the issues that came out in that special meeting were not a part of the majority, but yet they were factual. They all came to be true. Because of the primary, it didn't increase voter turnout. It didn't save the city any money. And it was about politics. None of that would have been discussed if we hadn't called a special meeting. When I think of the special meeting related to the city's budget and us getting the budget online, none of that would have happened without the ability to call a special meeting. And I've said this before, you know, the founding fathers that formed our original charter, probably back when our city had a stronger balance between Republican and Democrat, and not where it's just an all Democratic supposedly council, saw fit and understood the importance of protecting the minority voice on council. It's something that's inherent within the democratic process. So again, I asked this council, since we're talking about looking at something, this isn't a resolution, this is changing our charter. There has been, to my knowledge, no frivolous use of the special meeting. But what has happened, if we did not have the opportunity to have special meetings, there never would have been an in-depth discussion about the primary. There never would have been an in-depth discussion about, I'll even throw in the discussion about the water bill, which we still haven't even addressed. But when we were having meetings to deal with the water issue, and then of course, last but not least, about the budget, which led to us passing legislation to put our budget online, even though it's still, we're still waiting for it to be online. So again, I just like to, if someone could point to if there's been a case of special meetings being abused.
Ms. Somerville?
Chairman, I'm sorry.
Ms. Somerville?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Again, in response to Councilman Neal, the reason why this is even being brought up is because there have been many situations where special meetings have been just frivolously called. Not only have special meetings been called and council's office has done much work to prepare for those special meetings, those meetings were then canceled. So again, that's why we're looking at this issue, is because we've had some issues in the past as it relates to special meetings. So again, what we're saying is, if we're serious about wanting to have a special meeting and bring council together to talk about a very important issue, just as you brought forth, Councilman Neal, which was the conversation about the last issue, which was an important issue. You're just going to have to reach out to 4 council members to make that happen, because again, we've had some abuse. We've had council office prepare for special meetings. At the time, our clerk went over and around the city handing out special notices about the meetings, and then the 2 individuals that asked for the meeting then canceled the meeting. So again, that's why we are looking at this, because we have seen some abuse in the past.
Yes, but Madam President, you have to admit the
We go
reason
to
why those
Mr.
meetings were
Swirsky now.
canceled.
Mr. Swirsky?
Yeah, after the meeting, I asked the clerk, Mrs. Viviano, to go back and look and see how many meetings we'd had, what the topics were. In 2019, we had 6. They are pretty good topics, but I don't think any, and in 2018, same thing, 6, maybe that one is 7, 3, 6. They were pretty good topics, but they're all, most of them seem like things that could be dealt with at our regular council meetings. We have committee meetings in the afternoon. We have council as a whole in the evening. And hopefully we can avoid asking people to come to another meeting when maybe they should be spending time serving their constituents. So I think the 4 is an improvement, and I support that. I think we can be a little more efficient in how we get different topics addressed, and I think it's for the benefit of all of us, really.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fusco, I saw you doing handstands there, so sorry.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I apologize if I missed a portion of it. I guess I can take a hint. I was booted off, so I'm back on though. The reason why I wanted to say something was, in fact, this is truly a compromise. The original proposal was 7, now it's down to 4, which is 30% of city council, which is a minority of city council. The other side of it is the cost that's associated with this. It costs money in order to have these meetings, especially it's interesting that you bring up 2 failed proposals that were discussed, in fact, you take that in consideration, as well as the fact that they have been canceled in the past. I think this is a very reasonable request to ask the voters to consider. 4 people out of 13 can request a special meeting should that be needed. And I think this is a very reasonable compromise that has been brought forward here. And with that, I would recommend approval, the suspension of the rules.
Second.
Okay. Looking around to see if there's anybody that we've missed here.
Ellen also had her hand up.
Okay, please go right ahead.
Sorry, that was earlier. I just wanted to make sure that everyone on council was aware that the council president and the mayor, of course, can still call a special meeting on their own. Some of the meetings referenced in this conversation were called by either the council president or the mayor, which of course would still be the case. Special meetings are designed in the charter for those matters that for some reason cannot be dealt with during the normal council meetings that are held routinely on Mondays.
Yeah. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mobian?
Yeah, thank you very much, Alan, for mentioning that, because when I heard these numbers about 6 meetings and all that, I didn't think there were called by 2 individuals, because as you indicated, the president can call a meeting, the mayor can call a meeting, and until now, 2 people on council could call a meeting. And I know that 2 people on council hadn't called that many meetings. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other comments? We do, Mr. Neal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just, folks, let's be 100% transparent. Those meetings were canceled because the administration didn't want those meetings, so they didn't show up. Again, I think the thing that stands true to the residents of the city is looking at how the primary discussion took place. It wouldn't have took place. And there was already a majority vote for that. There was 8, but the push was to get a super majority. The push, don't forget the politics that was connected with that. I mean, we cannot operate like, none of this stuff happened. So what I'm saying is, there is a reason why the founding fathers had it for 2, why the mayor by himself could call a special meeting, why the president, who we elect to represent the interest of council, can call a meeting, and why 2 people, just 2, can call a meeting. It's because of it cuts the politics. So what this council does is what it does, but understand everything we do now is documented. Everything we do now is documented. Pull up the special meetings on the primary. Pull up the newspaper articles that came out immediately after that, when we got ready to run. How there was a push to try to get a supermajority on council. That is why, back when Akron had a more balanced politics of Democrat and Republican, they understood to protect the essence, the purity of the democratic process. You had that in there as far as the special meeting. So council will do what it does, but understand, we don't operate in obscurity.
All right. Okay, I do, but just to go back to one point, I do believe that, you know, what we did with the primaries, though it did have an effect on veterans. I think it also kind of brought us in line with some of Ohio code too. So, well, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I thought we'd already, yes.
No, we had a motion from, I believe, Mr. Fusco, and then I was looking for a second, which I
Second.
received from Mr. Malik, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Roll call.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
This motion passes 5-0.
Okay. And I believe those two were the only two that we had amendments to, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And we're on item number 6 now. Questions or comments regarding item number 6? Here, make sure I don't miss anyone. Let's see. Mr. Fusco, did you have a question? Okay.
I was going to recommend suspension of the rules with a favorable
Okay.
report.
Motion for suspension of the rules.
Second.
Have a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Roll call.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
This motion passes 5-0.
Okay. And then lastly, there was the resolution pertaining to Juneteenth. Ms. Samples, you on with us here? I'm looking.
Yes, I'm here. 1 second.
Okay, sure.
Everyone's face. Thank you.
There we go.
This is the resolution calling for making Juneteenth a holiday here beginning June 19th of next year here in the city of Akron. I've given everyone a week to look into the history of Juneteenth and the reason for me requesting a passage of this. So I'm just requesting passage today.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your work. Any questions or comments for Ms. Samples or anyone? All right. Looking for a motion.
Suspension of the rules with a favorable report. And I would also ask Mr. Freeman, out of respect to the sponsor, I'd like to add my name as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Roll call.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
This motion passes 5-0.
All right, very good. And I'm scrolling through here. We have no new items, correct, Sarah?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, we will call the meeting adjourned at 3:49. And I believe we have budget finance next.
We do. Those committee members are Freeman, Amobian, Malik, Baylor, and Lombardo, and you can get started whenever you're ready.
Okay, very good. All right, we'll call to order the budget and finance meeting. We'll do a roll call on all members.
Freeman,
Here.
Amobian,
Here.
Malik,
Here.
Baylor,
Here.
Lombardo.
Here.
All members are present.
All right, very good. All right, we have several items here, 3 to be exact. The first is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a bond of the city in a principal amount not to exceed $2,500,000 for sale to the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund for the state of Ohio to finance the cost of improvements to the city's wastewater system, pledging certain revenues from the city's wastewater system on a subordinated basis to secure the payment of the principal and interest on the bond, and authorizing the execution and delivery of the bond, the trust agreement, and other documents, and the taking of other actions related to the issuance and sale of the bond, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you.
Chairman, I'm sorry, there needs to be a motion to suspend the rules for in-person
Oh, I
meetings.
didn't do that. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay,
like to-
remember everything I just read, and let's make a motion to suspend the rules as pertains to in-person meeting and voting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now, who's going to be speaking to us about item number 1? Mr. Fricker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is another, sewer loan through the state of Ohio that we're getting very low interest rates on. This is typical to the bond issuances that we've done in the past.
Very good. Questions or comments from any other committee members? First off, any other members of council? Questions? Okay. All right. We're going to be taking a break here for a month. I think we probably, Mr. Fricker, would get this passed. And
Correct. We are in a good interest rate environment now, so we would request, suspension of the rules for this.
okay.
So move. Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
Freeman,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Baylor,
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
This motion passes 5-0.
Okay, very good. Item number 2, this is an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of notes of the city in the maximum principal amount of $5,500,000 under Section 13 of Article 8 of the Constitution of the State of Ohio and Chapter 165 of the Ohio Revised Code to assist in financing a portion of the costs of a project as defined in Section 165.01 of the Ohio Revised Code for the purpose of creating or preserving jobs and employment opportunities and improving the economic welfare of the people of the city of Akron and of the state of Ohio and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is going to be a one-year note issuance to fund projects related to various energy projects that we have here in the city. A number of these will be related to our steam system and provide funding for adding additional customers to the steam system. And then some of the funding will be dedicated towards some energy improvements in the Canal Park Stadium. So we do have Mark Divis here from Akron Energy Systems, and here's a brief presentation on the various projects that we're going to be doing.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Mark. Welcome.
How you doing, Councilman?
Good.
Well, good afternoon, Akron City Council. It's great to see all of you. Some of you for the first time. So I want to run through a little bit of this. As Steve said, this is focused on 3 areas. One is the district energy system. Give you a brief update. The plant is fully operational. The new plant, it's running really well. So again, thank you for all your support, for all of you that voted for us, and all of you that were members before, you all voted for it. So thank you very much for trusting us to deliver this project for Akron. So it's running well. We were going to have a grand opening, but we've delayed that for obvious reasons. So there'll be a video grand opening that we'll send around to all of you to see the wonderful investment that you all supported in the community. But this is about the paradigm shifting in the district energy system. So we're actually growing and a lot of interest in being able to help development downtown. So as we expected, once we fixed the system, there'd be an interest in using the system. So there's 3 buildings that have committed in principle to long-term contracts. The Mayflower Manor, which is being redeveloped, the Ascend Tower, which is the old Ramada, Cascade project, which is getting redone, and then Canal Place. They're taking some of the old rubber factory buildings on the BF Goodrich complex and converting them to housing, and so those are all going to go on district energy as part of the agreement with Canal Place. So these will all be long-term agreements, and our investment, the city's investment in that, is infrastructure to serve them and then help them design their building systems to utilize the product. The second part is a Canal Park Stadium. Part of it is the facility's hit 24 years old, which is hard to believe. It seems like it was yesterday, but the HVAC system in the facility needs to be completely replaced. It's just chewing up maintenance costs, and it's It's literally the most expensive system to operate in all of minor league baseball. So this will replace the system with a more efficient system with full controls. And then there's some issues throughout the ballpark that are age-related issues like roofing and water infiltration into the stadium, which is, getting to the structural steel on the stadium, things that have to be dealt with at the stadium that we're going to wrap into the HVAC project so that those conditions don't lead to a structural deterioration of the ballpark. It's just water infiltration is the biggest issue, caulking things, sealing, and getting rainwater runoff taken care of. The third one is the investing in energy things in the city. So during COVID, when all the city buildings were shut down, the service director allowed us and our team and the city's building management people to go through the community centers and public service buildings and do an audit of things that we could see from an energy savings and how to deploy things to save energy in the city buildings. And so we started to do some of that work, and we just did Summit Lake. We're doing Summit Lake Community Center, which is going to have air conditioning in the gym, which it's never had before, at no additional capital than replacing the unit. And we're going to do things like smart thermostats that we can remotely shut off, put controls on, so that we're not, setting buildings at 74 degrees or 75 degrees in the middle of the winter on a weekend when nobody's there. Simple things to cut energy costs down. LED projects throughout the buildings and the parking decks. The parking decks, could all use an LED retrofit. These types of projects have, somewhere between 30 and 40% rates of return. So they're fantastic. So this project, this initial project is all high return projects that will pay through with energy savings.
Thank you very much. You even got music at the end of your presentation from someone.
Yeah. The last part of it is we're going to use the same platform that we use for deploying the investment in building the new plant, which is the service director's office authorizes all individual release of funds and investments from this funding. So AES acts as the deployment agent of those funds, so manages the investment, and then the finance department does an audit of the funds and things like that, so that we're being good stewards of the money.
What would be the time frame on seeing a couple years to when we could honestly look and say, okay, here's the savings?
Well, but the HVAC at the ballpark is going to be as soon as so it's about 4 to 5 months to get the project completed. We've already have it designed, so we've already bid it out. So this is really about ordering the equipment and getting installed. So some of this stuff you're going to see it really quick. Some of this stuff will be a little bit longer, because let's take for Ascend, that project's going to have a cycle. Development projects don't start out at full occupancy. They tend to take a while to build up, right? So you're investing long-term in those assets into downtown. So you're co-investing with the developers. In Cleveland, when I ran Cleveland Thermal, we did this for, every major development in downtown Cleveland, co-invested, and it was a great investment for the business to do that, because then you retain them long-term and you grow with them.
You did. I mean, obviously you did a great job. You made the dead walk again over there. It really brought something back to life.
No, it's a great team, and it's a great partnership with the city and council. I can't imagine. I mean, this is just a great story that it's not one person that's responsible for this. It's the whole community, and it's a great team we've got here.
Yeah, hopefully when the whole COVID mess is over with, some of our new council people can get down and see just the fantastic job you've done down there.
So love to have you.
Thank you. So questions or comments from looking around here?
Chair.
Yes, Ms. Amobian.
Yeah. Do you still have those long-term agreements with the hospital and the university?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And all new buildings, that requires all new buildings that they build to go onto the system.
Very good. Thank you very much.
We recall the day when, some of the hospitals were wondering, if they were going to be building their own power plants and whatnot. And knocked the ball out of the park, and everybody's getting chilled water and heat in the winter. So thank you.
Right now, I think everybody really appreciates the chilled water.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Malik?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Davis and Mr. Fricker. Mr. Fricker, if I'm reading it right, the interest on the notes will be $90,000 and the maturity of the notes will be over the course of 1 year. Can you just explain a little bit what the thought process was in having sort of 1 year notes as the way of financing this?
Well, because we don't know the exact timing of the disbursements of the money. So we didn't want to issue long-term yet without knowing exactly when we would need the funding. So it's on a kind of on a draw basis that we've set this up. So that allows us the flexibility to draw and only pay interest on the funds as we draw them.
Thank you very much, sir.
Question. All right, anyone else? Okay, if we have no further questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Okay, roll call.
Freeman,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Baylor,
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
This motion passes 5-0.
Mark, thank you very much. Thanks for
Thank
being
you
with
so
us.
much. I appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we have one final item here. And this is an ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent or her designee to enter into a contract or contracts with Tyler Technologies to purchase the Odyssey Case Management Systems software as a service, SaaS, and declaring an emergency. Who's going to be addressing us?
This is Montrella Jackson, Court Administrator from Akron Municipal Court. We also have Jim Laria on the call, Clerk of Court, and Larry Lee, our Court IT Director.
Okay.
Okay, so before you today, good afternoon, first of all, Chair and committee members of the Budget and Finance Committee. Before you today is a proposal for our case management system to replace the 1984 system. It's over 30 years old, and I know we've, over the 8 years that I've been here, each year we've come to you, explaining our need to replace it. So in the last 3 years, we have been reviewing proposals, meeting with vendors, and in 2019, as we were closing in on the final process, we were hit with the cyber virus, so that delayed it some. But here we are, I'm back having reviewed the contract. I want to give special thanks to the law department, to the clerk of court, of course, our court IT, Ken Klicka from City IT, for helping us review a very lengthy proposal. So today we have before you a request to authorize the purchasing agent to enter into contract with Tyler Technologies for their Odyssey case management system, which would handle our over 60,000 civil, traffic, criminal, and parking cases. The system, we visited Cleveland Municipal Court, which is going forward with the system. They're probably about 16 months into their 18-month implementation. Tyler is also the vendor that's working on the CAD system with law enforcement. So we hope that there can be some connectivity in that regard. So for the efficient operations of the court, the judges did order and determined that the Tyler technology system was best suited for our court.
Okay, looking around here. Any questions or comments?
Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
Oh, Councilman Malik, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ms. Jackson and Mr. Lee and Mr. Laria for being here. I was really glad to see the program come in, the contract for the program, because obviously this is something that we discussed in the budget hearings, and I know has been discussed many previous years. I know this is something that's been worked on for many years. And I think it's similar to what we discussed earlier today in the Public Utilities Committee with regard to the electronic meters. But I had a couple of questions, and I know that there was some information shared earlier today comparing the 3 different bids, so we have a chance to really understand sort of the mechanics of that. I think it's important that council has a chance to really understand, the system, the current system, as you said, is, more than 30 years old. And so I think we want to know what the next system that we're buying is. But I know that one of the issues is that these, the case files have largely been paper files, right, over the years, and that's been one of the issues. What things will be paper files going forward, and how much are we moving to a paperless system?
I will, if Jim Leary is on the call, he can share more detail in that regard. But I will say that this is a joint purchase between the judges' computerization fund and the clerk's computerization fund. And then also we have a $200,000 grant from the Ohio Supreme Court for the project. So Jim, do you want to share about the paper filing versus electronic?
This system can eventually handle e-filing. So it's something we can grow into and eventually do less and less with the file. But initially, I don't see us just going straight to electronic filing. It'll be a process, but with this software, it will allow for that process. And I foresee at some point, eventually, we will become a paperless court. Again, this review has been highly scrutinized between both divisions, looking at all the companies and what technology is best fits for what our needs are for the future. And I think moving forward, Tyler by far seems to be the most modern as far as looking at paperless technology. And I think eventually we'll end up there, but I don't see it being ready to go day one. And that'll be a growing part, just not on our staff, but on the judges as well, getting used to work without a file. So it'll be a process that'll, have to work its way through. But that's part of the plan, long range, is to eventually go paperless.
If I can follow up, please.
Mr. Mount.
Ms. Jackson, if you were going to.
Oh, no, and I was just say one of the challenges, the existing system is more of a system built for the data entry by the clerk's office. The new system will give the judges the capability and the judges staff to also create documents in the system. So in that regard, we will become less paper because we're creating journal entries and documents directly from the judge's bench.
Thank you very much. I guess to follow up with Mr. Larry, I guess what are the obstacles to sort of committing to e-filing now? I mean, because, that is something we have at the county court level. And I know that, in my mind, again, this is just, we haven't had the chance to highly scrutinize this yet, but what is the, it seems like this would be the time to do it when we're making this 18-month implementation, but it seems like that isn't necessarily a foregone conclusion that we'll move to it.
Well, it's a question of need. I mean, right now we are doing a little bit of e-filing. We're receiving all our traffic tickets from the State Patrol and from Bath Police Department by way of e-filing. So we do have that available. And if you look at our civil division, even though they're not e-filing, we do have a digital format that within 24 hours, it is up and on the web so that anybody can immediately review any pleadings or notice and service and all those kind of things. So even though it isn't, quote, e-filing, we do have digital processes in place that kind of mirrors that, although they're not actually filing the pleadings. And one of the reasons I've kind of resisted to go straight to e-filing, as long as we're using the file, I didn't want us to have to absorb all the copy costs of all the pleadings coming in until we're truly ready to go paperless, because that is a very expensive way to go if I've got to download all this stuff and then print everything out. Right now, we don't have any of those kind of costs. The attorneys prepare their pleadings and then we digitize them and put them into the format, and that cost is absolutely nothing other than employees' time to make sure it gets uploaded. But we have that process down. That what's filed today civilly is online tomorrow. So we're literally only 24 hours away from e-filing. Now in criminal, in traffic, that's a little different. We're moving that direction, but it's different processes that are used in criminal and traffic filings and are in civil.
And this system will allow us to this system will allow us to move in that direction. It does have that capability down the road. So it's not like a system where we're just held to paper.
What do you? It almost feels like we're kicking the can down the road. I'm not, and again, I'm a neophyte when it comes to this, but Mr. Swirsky.
Well, just, I like the idea of a paperless court. I mean, it seems like it'd be a lot more efficient in a lot of ways. But what kind of timeline are we talking about here? When is this going to happen?
So we expect a 18-month implementation period. They did quote us on 14 months. We've been watching Cleveland. And like I said, back in March, I believe they extended their system, their timeline, but the proposal at this point, we're expecting 18 months.
Thank you.
And we've got, like I said, over 34 years of records that have to be brought over into the new system. So that's one of the big things, is that conversion process. That's really going to take the time, is when we're talking why it will take so long, is we've got all these records currently available online from our current system that have to be converted into the new format. So those records will be available, online also, rather than just try to start forward and be running two systems at once. So the plan is to eventually move over completely to Tyler, and it does provide for e-filing and to become a paperless court, but it'll be a process. There's no question about it. But I think we're fixed to do that pretty seamlessly once we start. But it's just a question of literally getting started.
But Ms. Jackson, Mr.
Okay, I'll go to Ms. Amobian, and then after that, Mr. Fusco.
Ms. Jackson, one of the issues that was discussed when you came before the budget hearing, you talked about not being able to, if a person has multiple cases in different courts, different divisions, the judge can't put them all together. This system, it sounds like, is not going to allow you to do that either at this point. Is that correct?
Actually, this system, the reason we chose it, it's very intuitive. So something of that, what we will be able to do is eliminate multiple systems. For instance, we have currently a separate system in the probation department, and then several staff, they keep spreadsheets, different things. This system would put everything into one system. So I can't see a reason why we wouldn't be able to see multiple cases. That's my expectation from the system, that it's really going to streamline our review of information, accessing information.
So that will help.
Yes.
And Mr. Laria, when you talk about adding the other pieces, after the 18-month implementation, when do you anticipate starting to add the other ones?
Almost immediately. Once everybody gets comfortable and up to speed with the new system, we can start phasing some of the other things out. But there's going to be some downtime. I mean, you're literally trying to retrain everybody in a whole new data entry process, both in my office and within the judges, and then having to learn all the capabilities that the system will provide. And it really does provide us a ton of different options that will allow us to access information at different levels that we currently don't have. So it should go fairly fast once we get into it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
And I will add also that I didn't mention that we received a grant from the National Center of State Courts. So we have had two IT consultants on site helping us do the business process mapping, eliminating, some of the duplications, mapping our procedures. And these are consultants that strictly work with courts across the entire country. So it's been very eye-opening looking at our processes in that regard.
Mr. Fusco?
Very good. Yes, thank you. I want to congratulate the courts, the clerk, everyone moving forward here, because I know this has been something that's been talked about and discussed for a really long time. I know, attached to our legislation, it says the last time we've seen something like this in terms of case management was in '84, I believe, over 30 years. My question is who's going to be on the implementation team?
So that's part of the what we're reviewing with the consultants. there as we do the business process mapping, but certainly we have 3 in-house IT staff, myself, one of the judges will be designated. More than likely it will be Judge Walker. She's taken the lead on this project. But we also need to equip ourselves with a project manager. So we'll be reviewing internally, but that's from our side. And then we'll have people designated for each type of case. The functional areas of the court, probation, small claims, civil, but Jim can speak to his area.
And I'll have the same thing. I've got my IT person, and I have my supervisors. We'll be going through making sure we're meeting all of our statutory objectives that we need to do to make sure that the system is meeting our current needs. And we've sat down with Tyler and we've had a number of demonstrations and we've gone through. So, and they also have done other courts, so they understand what we need to meet all the state statutory requirements. Because that was one thing I was a little initially worried about, is this company originally really wasn't located here in Ohio, and I didn't want us to have to do all the research and all the detail work and pay for all that to get us to comply with all our requirements. But with them already having contracts and everything lined up with Cleveland and a number of other courts in Ohio, that'll already pretty much be in hand when we start to work through our processes. They'll know what we need to have.
And then from our work with Cleveland, we were able to, one thing that they gave us as advice is to make sure our statement of work was very detailed. So we added probably another 6 pages to the contract of a checklist of what our expectations are and that sort of thing that would not have originally been in the contract.
Great, that all makes a lot of sense. I certainly appreciate it, but my concern, to be honest with you, and with all respect to those that are on the implementation team, especially the IT kind of folks, they're used to operating and working with, equipment from, 1980s. Let's just say it, there's not many, there's not many organizations out there, public, private, nonprofit, what have you, that is used to that. This is going to be a re-engineering of the whole system. It's going to take a lot, and you guys are taking that extremely seriously, and I so appreciate that. But just a little bit of concern about the implementation side of it. The other concern I have, to be honest and frank with you, is the security. We did experience a hack, obviously, within our clerk's office at the time a while back that unfortunately caused the Sagamore Hills taxpayers funds. So the security piece, I think, is something else that really needs to be to make sure that this is going to truly be secure. I think that's a concern that we should be discussing as well.
I would share that, so with the money that we would want to spend with Tyler, that includes consultants from the vendor, but also we have the 2 consultants from the National Center, and Ken Klicka, he's been involved in our meetings as well. The city has, in terms of the cyber security issues, we've worked with him on that. But those are very valid concerns that we want to make sure that we have covered. So thank you, Councilman.
And the other thing to see here is this is also a cloud-based application, the software. So we won't be responsible for the hardware operation of the system. We will have a company that's a multi-billion-dollar operation that will have all the necessary firewalls and the deep pockets to make sure that we have all the security that we need. And the other thing is, the software might be 30-some years old, but our hardware is very up to date. We use PCs here, we use mouses, it's all pretty much up to date with current technology needs. But the software itself is 30-some years old that actually runs it. But as far as from a hardware perspective, we've kept pretty current as far as the hardware is concerned.
Mr. Malik, I think I saw your hand.
Yes, thank you very much. I had two follow-ups. One of the things is I know the city and the county have the matrix system. How does this relate to matrix? Does it interface directly with matrix? And then the other was, I know that in the documentation, I think the baseline is like 100 different licenses, I believe, for city employees. How did we get to that number, and are we confident that that's enough licenses to be used?
Well, we went by our employees, the judges and ours, and, you know, basically figured out how many of the licenses we need. It may actually in the end be less than that. But I really feel we've got plenty of licensing to have people on board and using it all at the same time. Montrell, you want anything to add on that?
Just that what we did is we went through our roster with the vendor and decided based on schedules. So we figured we would actually be using less. So the comparative chart that you see, so we could prepare apples to apples, was all 100 users, but we're actually planning for 81 users. And those are what I believe called, and Larry can correct me if I'm wrong, is it concurrent, where you can have other users use it, you just can't have more than 81 people on at one time? Is that how? Is that
I believe that's
correct, Larry?
correct. Yeah, concurrent seats.
Right. So, and some of the clerk staff are, you know, they rotate in the evenings or at night. So that would reduce that number even further. And then in terms of the matrix system, so I did talk to Gert a little bit about that. I'm not sure how they're tying that to their CAD system, but that's something we would want to work with the vendor with. And that was the nice thing about the Tyler product, is that once it's built, our staff are trained to how to use it and to program things. And then we're in-house with the system. So, and then there's other systems that they integrate with that we would be able to work with them on.
And the matrix conforms very well with the Tyler system. I have talked with Gert about that, and it should be an easy tie-in. Shouldn't take much of a tie-in. Plus, with the police department using the Tyler CAD system, I look for an easy transition there so that we can get online filing on traffic citations and those kind of things. So I think across the board, it's going to be win-win with our other partners in the justice system.
All right, any other questions or comments? Around here, Mr. Fusco?
Yes, thank you. I would respectfully ask the committee, and I know that there's some grants and such that are involved with this, but we did receive some information today, this afternoon, I should say, in reference to this, much more information. But I would respectfully request that the committee consider taking time on this particular proposal. It's a pretty hefty sum, and ask that the committee as well as council have an opportunity to take a little deeper dive into this.
Okay, I'm looking around. Any other comments or questions?
Is that going to hamper them at all?
You mean as far as the grants go, if it will hamper them? Or?
Yeah. As far as their timelines that they have to meet.
Yes, we are on a timeline with the usage of the Supreme Court grant that's available, which is $195,000. And we do have a demo that's scheduled on August 7th that we're demoing to all staff. It's a high level overview of the system, which we could invite council to if you wanted to participate in that, or we could set up something separate. But I'd be happy to set up a demo if that's needed.
Now, we won't be back in session until September 14th. Would that create a problem for you guys? Mr. Fusco is asking us to take essentially. And we just want to make sure that we're not slowing you down or interfering with anything you have to meet.
And thank you. That is one of the reasons we did request that it be reviewed today by council, because of the recess. And this isn't a normal time where we're presenting to you on items, but with the pandemic and everything going on, we would like to move forward with the project. And with the Supreme Court funding, there is a timeline on that. So
we've been at this for literally a number of years, as far as going through all the detailed operations of what we need. And I think we've really worked through all the detail that what the judges need and what I need to continue. And I think we're at a good place where everybody's on the same page. And we really need to kind of close this down and move forward if that's possible.
So, Mr. Fusco, are there specific questions, concerns? I don't want to make a recommendation if there's some things that you are not comfortable with.
What is the time frame? I mean, in terms of the grant, that's my question, I guess.
So the $195,000 funds the conversion of the data, which is so currently, I'm trying to remember all the deadlines. So currently the deadline is December. We could possibly get somewhat of an extension, but still we would want to have spent the $195,000. And again, we're spending funds that have already been set aside specifically for computerization of the court. And we figured out a way where we're continuing to utilize for each year what we bring in as revenues to pay off the ongoing costs, the yearly maintenance of the system. So we've costed everything out. The judges have issued a journal entry authorizing Tyler for us to move forward with. And so all 6 of the judges signed that journal entry. So we're comfortable with the proposal.
If I could, Mr. Chair,
Please.
I would not want to jeopardize that grant whatsoever. It's just that we just got this afternoon, quite a bit of information to digest in a relatively short period of time. So again, I wouldn't want to jeopardize any funding, but this is kind of a condensed time frame for us, even though you guys have had 3 years.
Yeah. I understand that point as well. Mr. Malik?
Yeah, I just want to echo that point. And, I had this discussion with Ms. Jackson, and I have immense respect for you, Ms. Jackson. But when we talk about the fact that this has been something that has, been scrutinized for years, really, to get to this point, my frustration comes from a place that we are a coordinate branch of the government, and we're supposed to approve this contract with the scrutiny of a business day, okay? Yeah. And so there are questions about what the roadmap and timeline is with regard to, turning this to a completely electronic court. There are questions about how this would tie into Matrix. And I had the same thing with Councilman Fusco. I can't imagine that that we would not want to ultimately agree with a unanimous decision by the judges, and the clerk's office and your office. But at the same time, it's frustrating to come to a place where we're asked to approve it on a day's basis when there appear to be so much that we ought to learn about this issue. And that was a similar, that I think echoes some of the thoughts and feelings that we had back in early March when we had these discussions. So, my preference would be for time, unless there is a reason why that would severely hamper this project, to give us a chance to get a little bit of a better understanding.
But was that in the form of a motion, or you just tell me?
That was not in the form of a motion yet.
Okay.
May I add that? So also the law department, we've been reviewing the contract with law director David Honig. We spent a couple of years going through the contract as well. So just want to add that as an additional component, that there were those that was reviewed in terms of to legal content and what the expectations would need to be for the prosecutor's office. But I certainly understand, and as we discussed earlier, it's the prerogative of counsel in terms of your decision on this topic.
And we don't hear it all the time, but we do tend to hear, and I think even more so as of late, well, you guys looked at something and passed it that same day, and I think we are starting to slow down on some things and say we probably need to look at that a little closer. So
I guess what my question, Mr. Chair, is I do understand what's being requested, but it sounds like we have everybody on the same page once and they're moving in the direction to implement it. And when were you planning to have the implementation start?
The only thing between us and beginning the implementation is the passage of the legislation. Everything, and that's why we put the whole review of the contract on the front end, so we wouldn't hold up the process. And now that we do have the grant for the Supreme Court as well, there's funding tied to that. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any additional questions or concerns. I know that a lot of things on the fast track, but this sounds to me, as much as we have been hearing about this for years, that this is certainly something we ought to just allow to go on the fast track. Personally, that's my feeling.
But does it jeopardize that grant if we refer this item to our next meeting? Because I'm still not sure. If I heard the answer, I didn't hear the answer.
So that, I don't know, Jim, you're on the call too. I'm thinking in terms of the timeline, the Supreme Court grant, the deadline is December.
Well, we have to have everything in place and have been, I think, use that portion of the grant by the end of the year. Now, like you said, you could probably get an extension. I mean, basically, we're pushing, it sounds like we're going to push this back about a month and a half before we'll be able to move on anything. And I'm not sure exactly what council's requesting additional information you'd like. We pretty much said that we're going to be compatible with the prosecutor's stuff. We're going to be compatible with the city police department. It's got all the components as far as becoming a paperless court. I'm not quite sure exactly what else you need. I mean, we've done extensive research on trying to get this through and make sure all the parties that will actually use the system are getting what they need. And I think we're all on the same page as far as an operational standpoint. And it's just a matter of making sure that we've got the money in place to be able to proceed.
Other questions or comments? Looking around the room here. Yes, Mr. Lombardo.
Well, I'm just thinking in my mind, I just keep going back to 1984. They've had this system since 1984. They've been doing a lot of work on this, and I just hate for this to be behind another month and a half to get the process moving. I think they've done their due diligence, and from what I've seen and heard, I would just like to see this moved so they can continue their good work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I'm not sure if you can see Councilwoman Samples'
Oh, yes, I
hand
see.
is raised.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councilwoman Samples.
Thank you, Councilman Freeman. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard Ms. Jackson state that they have been working on this contract with our law department for some years. I know you guys have come back and forth with us quite a bit over the years, and to be able to move this system forward, I would hate for them to lose money and then they have to spend their own money when they could get grant money, especially if they've been there working on something for so long. And for me, for someone who came from that system, I know the importance of them being able to update that system over there. It's been a long time coming. I'm just trying to understand what the holdup is if they've been working with the law department for so long.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Malik.
I mean, I recognize the concerns that the folks have mentioned and not wanting to slow these things down. And if, if folks would like to pass this with suspension of the rules, I'm amenable to that. But I guess, again, I just want to share the frustration that, this is a big system. This is the system that we will have in place for the next decade or 2 decades. And, it would be nice if we could have a chance to, have that vendor demo, if we could understand if this will not move to immediate, paper, what at least the game plan is and what the timeline for that is. And again, I'm not trying to be a wet blanket about this, but at the end of the day, it's difficult to approve these kinds of things with a day's notice. And So with that, I'm happy to make a motion for suspension of the rules.
Say one thing.
And I second it.
Okay, we have a motion for suspension of the rules and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, roll call.
Freeman,
Nay.
Amobian,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Baylor,
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
Okay, we'll bring that before tonight.
Mr.
I'll get to you in just a moment, Mr. Fusco. I just would say again, this is the last day we're doing business here for a month, and not just to the courts, to anyone. Just back up for us for a few weeks so we can have a chance to look at some things. No one likes to do business with a sense of urgency, because sometimes the old saying is haste makes waste. And I'm not saying that we're making a wasteful decision here, just as folks that are accountable to the folks that we serve, just like to have more time when we look at items like this. So, and again, not disregarding any of the work that's been done, not saying that at all, but we're laying out $800,000 on something we got today. So
Yeah, we'll say no one's more excited, but more, intimidated by this whole process than me. But it's I would not come to you unless it was very critical for the court to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Anyone? Did I see? Yeah, Mr. Fusco.
Yeah, I would just again, don't want to hold up anything whatsoever in terms of grant funding that can be made available. I would like to find out, though, maybe those deadlines a little bit better, maybe before tonight. If we could find out what the deadline is for the grants and so on and so forth, that would be helpful. Maybe that would, at least help us explain to constituents whenever we were asked to do something like this, we can at least explain this is how it happened and this is why. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Who do we have?
Linda Mobian.
Oh, hi.
Ms. Jackson and Mr. Laria, if you could arrange for a demonstration or whatever after the break. But those of us who may be available on the 7th, we certainly will take you up on it, but who may not be. If you could arrange for a demonstration, that would be fantastic. Because it sounds like you've done all the work you need to do. It's just a matter of trying to start implementing it and get things moving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Amobian. All right, we have nothing else coming before us. We are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.